In this lecture, we are going to write a program which could compare two strings, a function like strcmp, which you saw in the previous lecture. So first, I create a file and name it string compare.c. We include the stdio.h because we want to use the printf function which is defined in this library, and then we say int main and we return 0 in here. So first we need to create two strings which you want to compare them to each other. So I want to create them using char pointer. The first one I name it a, which is pointing to hello, and another char pointer with the name of b, which points to another string, let's say hi. Now in here I say if a star a is equal to a star b, then I want you to do some instructions, else I want you to do something else. So what does this mean? We know that a is a pointer pointing to the address of the first element in this string, and by saying a star we are dereferencing it. So a star a, as we said before, means what is the content at the first element of this string, and the same happens about the b. So by saying this condition in here, we are saying if the first character in both the strings is equal. Well, if they are not equal to each other, we could say that the two strings are not the same, and therefore we could say not equal. But if they are like each other, we need to loop through other characters to make sure that all of the characters are equal to each other, so that we could say the strings are equivalent or are similar to each other. So in here I say we need to create a loop, right? So I create a while loop which would run infinitely by saying while 1. And also I want to create an integer named I equal to 0, and in here instead of a I want to say a plus I, and the same thing about the b plus I in here. And then in the if statement we say I is equal to I plus 1. So what happens is that first I is equal to 0. Then we check a plus I will, at first it would be the first element. If they are equal, then we want to increase the I. I would be equal to 1. And if the loop gets repeated, it would be a plus 1, which means the character at the index 1 or the second character. But we need to do it until we reach the final byte of the strings, which we know the final byte would be a null byte. So I say if a star a plus I, the same thing, is equal to a null byte, and also b plus I is equal to a null byte, then we could say that the length of them is equal, because we have reached the final byte or the end of the string for both of them at the same time. Therefore we could result in equal for both strings. Now we need to check other cases too. Other cases are if a plus I is equal to a null byte, but the thing is about the b plus I, which it is not equal to a null byte, which means that the a string is the b is not equal to a null byte. Sorry, in this case it means that we have reached the ending point of the a string, while b hasn't finished yet. So it means that b is longer than a. And then I want to just repeat this. So let me just copy all of this thing in here, and then I say or, and paste the same thing. We say if b is equal to a null byte, while a string is not equal to a null byte, which means that the length of a is bigger than b, because we know that if their length is not equal, then they are not the same. So in here I would say printf not equal different sizes, or in other words we could say that one of the strings being a subset of the other. Now how this works, let me just explain it to you. And also after each one of these things, you would want to break out of the loop. If they are equal or they are not equal to each other, you would want to break out of the loop for all of them. Now if you notice as an overview of this thing, first I is equal to 0, so we are checking the first element. For hello and hi, just imagine these two strings. So the first element are equal to each other, therefore we enter this if statement. So I would be equal to 1, and since a plus 1 isn't a null byte for each one of these strings, so the conditions in neither of these if statement would return true, therefore the loop would be repeated. Now it checks, because we have an infinite loop, right? It checks a plus 1, are they equal to each other? Well, no, they are not equal to each other, because a plus 1 is e, while b plus 1 is I, right? Therefore the characters are not the same, and the code in the else statement in here would get executed and it would have not equal. So I want to just save this and compile it to see the output, and then we would just compare them for two more strings. So in here I just say string compare. Well, it has compiled successfully, and then we execute the string compare and it says not equal. Now let's say I want to say b is equal to hello and then another character like 1 in here. So first I is equal to 0, we would have the first element, comparing the first element, they are equal, then I would be increased to 1, right? So I is equal to 1, none of the conditions in here would return true, the while loop would be repeated. Now we have a plus 1. Is it equal to b plus 1, the character at the index 1? Well, yes, we have two e's, and this would be repeated until we reach I is equal to 4. Well, a plus 4, is it equal to b plus 4? If you look, the content is still O, therefore we enter the if statement in here. I would be increased or incremented, and I would be equal to 5. Now it says a plus 5, is it pointing to a null byte, and also b plus 5, are they both pointing to a null byte? Well, no, b hasn't been b is not pointing to, b plus 5 is not pointing to a null byte, and it is pointing to a character, the one in here. So because we have an and in here, none of this condition wouldn't return true, and we enter the second if statement. It says, because we have an or in here, if one of the conditions is right or returns true, then we enter this block of data, right? So the first one, a plus I, which would be a plus 5, is that pointing to a null byte? Well, if you look, yes, actually it is the end of the string. What about the b plus 5? Well, it is not pointing to a null byte, therefore this condition would return true, and we enter this statement, this block of data in here. It would say not equal, different sizes, and break out of the loop. Now the thing is that the only time that we would have these instructions getting executed in this if statement is when one of the strings is a subset of the other. So I just save it, go and compile it and execute it, and as you see we have not equal, different sizes. And the final case, when we have two complete equal strings, if we execute it, we would have equal to each other. Also, I want to make some other examples, maybe for example 1 2 3 BV for the A, and if we say 1 2 3 BC in here, we would have not equal. This would be executed. Now I think you could figure out why. So if I just compile it and execute it, you see we have not equal in here. But if we say, let's say B, V, and then another character, A is a subset of B, right? So the codes in here would get executed. Now if we compile it and execute it again, you see we have not equal. different sizes. And at last, if we have completely same strings, then we would have equal in here. Now what I want to do is to, instead of printing something, I want to instead of print, I want to return. So I say return 1 if they are completely equal, unlike the strcmp which you saw in the previous lecture, which it returns a 0 if strings are equivalent. You want to return 1 if they are equal, and if one of them is a subset of the other, we would want to return, let's say, -2, and if they are not equal at all, we would want to return maybe -1 in here. And also what I want to do, instead of putting all the codes in one block in the main function, I want to put them in a different function. So we are going to create another header by putting these in another function and then make it a library like stdio.h that you see in here in the next lecture.